So now that we're in big A levels, let me tell you something. Highlighting your notes and calling that revision is not gonna cut it. If you don't do this already, start doing it. One of the biggest mistakes that I think stops people from getting an A* is so in 2020, I got 3 A* in my A levels, biology, chemistry, and RS, and this was a stark difference to when I was scoring Ds at the start of year 12. There's no doubt about it. A levels are 2 years of really hard work, so why not make it easier for yourself? This video is going to be all about how you can also get A* in your A levels and also upgrade your study methods so that you can spend more time doing what you actually want to do. These aren't going to be your typical general advice. It's going to be very comprehensive, very helpful, tips that you haven't really heard before, and I hope you guys find it useful. And this video took a lot of work, so be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and share it with friends, families, cousins, whoever, as it really helps support my channel. Anyways, let's jump straight into the video. So here are the timestamps for today's video. So I'm going to be telling you tips and tricks on how you can maximize your chances of getting A* in all of your A levels using subject hierarchies, exam questions, the most effective study method for A levels, how to make the best notes, how to use your revision resources, how to utilize your mocks, the importance of teachers, and also what to do with your free period. So as I said before, this is a really comprehensive video, so be sure to get a cup of tea, a notepad, get cozy, and let's get straight into it. So one of the most important things in getting A* in your A levels is to establish subject hierarchies. This basically means that not every subject should be given the same amount of time and priority. The thing that differentiates A levels from GCSEs is the sheer amount of content. Like, you'd probably think that, oh yeah, I'm going from 12 subjects to 3, so it's going to be much easier. That is the complete opposite, and I'm sure you know that if you're watching this video. There's so much more detail in the content, which makes it a lot harder to memorize. Because of this, the way that you treat A levels and GCSEs should be remarkably different, and you need to adapt your study method accordingly. One of the biggest mistakes that I think stops people from getting an A* is giving each subject the same amount of time. So you have a timetable, and let's say you want to study 12 hours throughout the week. You give each of your 3 A levels 4 hours. That is not effective. That is not going to be useful because each subject needs its own priority. Even though A levels are hard, the relative difficulty of each subject will depend on you. Some people are naturally better at math, so they don't need to spend as much time, while some people might need a lot more time to understand concept. After a few weeks of year 12, you should start to see which A level is the hardest and which is the easiest for you. The hardest A level for me was chemistry, and the easiest subject for me was RS. You can get a paper and write the list of subjects in order of difficulty, and then you can give each subject amount of hours according to the difficulty. You can turn this into a fraction. So depending on the amount of A levels you do, that will determine the denominator of the fraction. So if you do 3, you'll have 12, and if you do 4, it will be out of 16. And then you can assign each subject an amount of number according to the priority, and you have to make sure that the sum of it adds up to the denominator. So for example, 12. So let's say I would rate biology a 4 out of 12, chemistry a 6 out of 12, and religious studies would be the remaining 2 out of 12. And then I would times this by the amount of hours I intend to revise for the entire week. So let's say I wanted to revise 14 hours in a week. I would times each fraction by 14 to get the amount of hours I want to revise. So biology would turn out to be 4 hours 40 minutes, chemistry would turn out to be 7 hours, and religious studies would turn out to be 2 hours 20 minutes per week. Obviously, you don't need to be as strict with this. You can change it according to whatever suits you. So if you like to revise in 30-minute blocks, you can revise like that. If you want to change all of the time slightly, that's okay. It's just nice as a baseline, and then you can base your revision off of this and then change it according to what you think is helpful. When you finally do make your timetable, you can then slot in these hours into the timetable and schedule specific times where you'll cover specific subjects. I'll put a template of a timetable that you can use in the description, and you can make a new copy and change it according to your subject. I'm going to be making a video on how you can make an effective timetable soon, so make sure you have a look out for that. So you've planned your study sessions. Let's talk about what you should do in these study sessions. So let's move on to exam questions. And if you guys know me, you know that I love exam questions. I think exam questions are probably the best way that you can get an A*, and there's no doubt about it. It always works. So now that we're in big A levels, let me tell you something. Highlighting your notes and calling that revision is not going to cut it. It may have cut it for GCSEs, you might have gotten away with it, but for A levels, I promise you now, the sooner you get that kind of mindset out of your mind, the better, because it's really crucial. It's really important not to waste time, especially in the limited time that you have for A levels, doing ineffective methods. Ineffective methods include rewriting your notes, writing your notes on flashcards, highlighting your notes. At the end of the day, it may help you, but it's not going to be effective in the long term and for your long-term retention for the exam. All of these are what we call passive revision. And passive revision means that it makes less varied activity in your brain and ultimately less retention. And this is just a waste of time. And as I told you before, we don't have time to waste. Especially with revision, you have to start getting used to being uncomfortable. That's how you know that there's growth, and that's how you know that you're pushing yourself and that you're training your brain to adapt. So if you watch my videos, you know that exam questions are the way to go. It is tiring, I know, it is annoying when you get things wrong, but that's the whole point. It might not be what you want to hear, but listen right now, it is very crucial that you do this. The people who score the best in their A-levels tend to practice a lot, and they tend to get more experience. People who just use their notes than people who just highlight, people who just read the textbook. You need experience to be prepared for A-levels because the exams are tough, I'm not gonna lie to you. And obviously you guys know that there's so many resources out there to find the exam questions. The best method would be by searching on Google the subject, the exam board, and the topic that you want to cover, and they should come up. And if not, there's always workbooks that are online that you can purchase, and these are also very useful. But obviously it's worth saying that you can't do exam questions if you don't know the content, and it is really hard to learn the A-level content. So here's how you can effectively study the A-star method. So how do you study? So the most important thing about studying is that you should spend a good majority of it doing active recall. And if you don't know what active recall is, it's basically the active retrieval of information from your brain, reinforcing those networks and strengthening your memory retention. Active recall can be separated into many forms, and there are different types depending on the subject. For subjects which are objective, which means that the answers are either right or wrong, such as biology, flashcards are the way to go. So on the flashcard, you should have a question on the front and an answer on the back. It is really effective if you can make these phrased the way they would be in your exams. You can make 2 markers, 3 markers, 6 markers, and this will also just reinforce the experience and exposure that you have before the exam. For subjects which are content heavy, so this is history or religious studies, essay subjects, it's really important that you blurt. And blurting is basically when you have a piece of plain paper and you put the title in the middle, you put the topic in the middle, and you write down as much as you know about that topic in a set amount of time. This basically shows you where your weaknesses are, and ultimately highlighting your weaknesses is one of the most important things so you can improve your grade over time. You can't just keep and expect your grade to be changing. You need to focus on the things that you are worst at. And obviously blurting when you don't know a lot of stuff is painful, it's annoying. You sit down, you get ready, and you can hardly write a sentence down, and it can be really demotivating. But if you stick with it, if you continue to write the right answer in, then you'll gradually see an improvement over time, and this will also motivate you because it shows that you are learning, you're developing. And obviously this will take a while, it's not going to come quick. It's not going to be like after one session you know the whole topic back to front. You just have to have patience and believe in yourself and believe that you can memorize the content. And I found it particularly helpful to make summaries of each topic. So once I finished learning a topic in religious studies, I would make a summary A3 paper or A4 paper of it, and then I would use this as my mark scheme. So when I would blurt and I missed anything out, I would just refer back to this summary that I made and then add it into the blurt in another color. And I just feel like this is also really effective for learning things on the go, because you can just take this little piece of paper with you and read it over, and I really recommend this. So you should do this until you're semi-confident in that subject, until you're like 60 to 70% confident in the subject, and then it's time for exam questions. You need to practice what you have been learning. You need to put that into action. The most important thing is you shouldn't wait until you're 100% confident, because you're never really going to be 100% confident. There's always going to be a little fact that you forget, something that you struggle with, and that's okay. Just go and do the exam questions to see what you really need to learn. So the best websites for exam questions, if you're doing STEM subjects, so you're doing science and maths, I really recommend Physics Maths Tutor. It's free and they have booklets on each topic. If you do humanities such as English or history, be sure to utilize the past papers, and there's also questions that people make online, so you can also use those and just search it, and you can also make your own questions. The most important thing is you don't just do these questions. If you're confused about anything, you give it to your teacher. If you have an essay, give it to your teacher. Ask for constructive criticism and sit down with them if they have time and go through it. It's really important that you not only do these questions, but you learn from it and you learn from your mistakes to see some improvement in your grade. So now let's talk about notes. If you guys don't know, I've made a video on notes, on how to make effective notes, and be sure to check it out. But I'm going to be going over how to use notes for your A-levels, because A-level notes are different to GCSE notes. The most important thing is there's a lot of content, but don't spend the bulk of your time making notes. This will just waste a lot of time. With that being said, it's crucial that you understand things before you do exam questions. It's crucial that you understand rather than just memorize. This is especially important for science-based subjects such as biology, chemistry, because your understanding of it will help you memorize it. Memorizing something just because, it's not going to stick in your brain for long. If you know why something happens, then you'll know to memorize, and it will improve your memory retention. I really recommend that you do make notes and you use the textbook and the specification. Before you write down anything, open the specification and see what it wants you to know. know. These textbook writers are experts in making the textbook longer than it has to be. There's a lot of stuff that you don't need to know. It's really important that you know from the get-go what they actually want you to learn and what is going to come up in the exam. There's no point wasting your time writing the whole textbook down when the exam board doesn't want you to know everything. And sometimes the textbook actually includes the specification under the title of each subtopic, which is really helpful as well. The less words in your notes, the better. You don't want to have piles and piles of notes. You're never going to read them. You're never going to go through them. So what's the point of writing them? You want your notes to be as concise and understandable as possible. Before you even touch the pen or paper, read the entire spread of the topic. Understand it, go through it, understand what the main point of it is, what the main takeaway is. Just don't write as you read, because you're going to write things that you don't need to write. And you're more likely to just copy it down, which is also just really passive. Once you've read it, check if you understand it. Check if you would be able to explain it to someone. And if you don't, then make sure you understand it before moving on. So watch a video, read another summary, read another textbook. Anything that you can do to make sure that you understand the topic is really important. And then after that, you can start writing your notes. Once you understand it, it's best to start writing your notes before you forget it. And one of the best tips I can give you regarding notes for A-levels is try to do it before the lesson. Now, this is not realistic all the time. You might be too busy, you might have too much homework to be doing things before the lesson, but I promise you, once you do it, you will see how effective it is and how useful it is. To understand something before you even get to the lesson means you can ask questions about anything that you didn't understand when you were going through it. It's just much more effective than being overwhelmed in the lesson, not getting anything from the lesson, and then having to do it at home again. You don't have to go through that initial struggle of trying to understand something in the lesson because you've already tackled that hurdle on your own. And it's even better if you can do exam questions before the lesson, because then you can bring the exam questions to the teacher at the end of the lesson and go through them. Now let's move on to another important point, which is make your revision resources as you go along. If you don't do this already, start doing it. If you don't want to listen to me, then I don't know for you, because you're going to regret it really, really bad if you leave these all to the end. Make your revision resources as you go along. If you're watching this from year 12, then you're very, very lucky because you have so much time to do this. You don't want to be in big year 3, 2 months before your exam, making flashcards on the first topic. You don't want to be in that position, so don't do it. So many people regret doing this because it's just such an easy mistake. You can think, oh, I have a lot of time, I'll do it in half term, I'll do it in the holidays. And then it comes to the holidays and you don't have time to do it. It's just really stressful to leave it. You can't cram A-levels and get A stars. You can't cram an entire 2 years in one day and get A star. It's just really unlikely to happen. A-levels are as stressful as they are. Don't make it worse for yourself. So by revision resources, I mean stuff like flashcards, posters, mind maps, anything that you find effective. This will be different from person to person. Just keep them and keep them well. Write them as the topic finishes and just be organized. And if you are someone who struggles to be organized, I would recommend making these digital, so you can scan your mind maps and posters. You can make your flashcards on Quizlet or Anki. Just keep your stuff well, because you don't want to be searching for flashcards that you made in year 12 and have no idea where they are. So now let's move to the topic of mocks, which everyone hates. I know, it just seems really stressful. Like, why are you adding stress to an already stressful 2 years? But I promise you, they are to help you. This tip may be a bit intense for some and it might not be suitable for all people, but I would say treat your mocks like they are the real exams. Revise for them like they are the real exams, because it just gets you in that zone and prepares you for exam season, because exam season is stressful. I'm sure you know that. I'm not saying you should revise for nights on end, not sleep, be cramming all the time. It's never that serious. I am saying take them seriously. You are getting yourself ready for exam season. You are building your long-term memory and your exam technique by revising seriously for your mocks and end of subject tests. And if you actually do put effort into these mocks, then you can see where you truly are. It's better than if you just showed up to the exam on the day and got a bad grade and you're like, oh, it's because I didn't revise. If you do put in effort and you do still get a bad grade, then you can see where you're really going wrong, and that is really helpful. So remember, these mocks are not for your teachers, they're not for the school, they're for you and for your personal development. What you get from them will depend on how you use them. So let's move on to point number 6, which is to treasure your teachers. So I'm not saying be besties with your teachers, you should tell them everything, you should be so close to them. No, I'm just saying that you should have a good relationship with your teachers. The best person to ask when you're confused with something is your teacher. You can't be insulting them in class, not turning up to their lessons, itching, turning up late, being rude, and then expect them to help you when you're struggling. It's just not right. You want to build a relationship with them as you go along the year. You don't want to just turn up to their office with a stack of exam papers demanding them to be marked. They're not going to be happy. The more effort that you put in your classwork, the more effort that you put in class in general, the more they will see and the more they will respect you. the more likely they are to help you and provide you with extra feedback because they know that you will take it on board. The majority of teachers do want to see you do well, and they want to see you improve because after all, you are a representation of their teaching and of their class, so they do want to see everyone do well. Don't be scared of them either. Once you go into sixth form in college, the teachers tend to be more chill and they tend to treat you like an adult rather than a child, like in secondary school. So make the most of it and go talk to your teacher. If your teacher doesn't want to help you for any particular reason, then go to someone else in the department. Anyone who has any knowledge on the subject could really help you. Don't suffer in silence. Go and ask for help before it's too late. Last but not least, let's talk about free periods and what you should do in your free period. If you're in year 12 right now, I know you're probably feeling gassed. You have free periods, you can do whatever you want. In some schools you can leave and you can go to the town center, you can do anything, and it's so nice. It's such a burst of freedom that you didn't have in secondary school, and it's very easy to use these wrongly. Do not turn this free time into unseriousness. You will regret it in year 13. When it comes up to the last month before exams, you'll be looking back on all of the time that you wasted, thinking, oh, I should have did this, or I shouldn't have missed that free period, I should have stopped going out as much, and you're gonna feel really sad. Here's the good news. If you're watching this right now, then you have a chance to do things differently. Now, I'm not saying spend all your time in silence, head down, in the library, buried in work. Sometimes you need a break. Sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, I took a free period as a break and I enjoyed it, but it's a slippery slope. Don't turn every free period into a break. Do everything in moderation. I recommend to use your free periods doing the homework and getting on top of things so that when you get home, you can actually revise and actually do effective revision. Homework is important. Most of the time it is an exam question, it is a booklet which will really help you. So if you can get this out of the way first and have less things to do when you get home, you'll feel less stressed. You don't want to be the person who does their homework right before the lesson. It's stressful, it's unnecessary, and there's a lot of ways around it. As well as this, surround yourself with people who revise and actually want to do well in the exams. As people say, you are a representation of your friends. You might not want to hear it, but if you hang out with people who are loud, who are disruptive, who don't want to study, you're less likely to want to study. And I'm not saying cut off friends, stop talking to people, start being rude, but when you're in your free period, try to be around people who are going to be studious, who are going to not distract you. I'm personally someone who gets distracted a lot by people around me, so I prefer to be somewhere where it's quiet, where I'm in a place with less people, or at least it's a studying environment, and I find this more effective. There's nothing wrong with spending your free period with friends, but there's also lunchtime and break to hang out with them, so don't think that free periods is the only time that you have. So guys, we're coming up to the end of the video. I really hope you found it useful, and if you did, be sure to like, comment and subscribe. As well as this, be sure to share this video with friends, families, cousins, anyone that you think will find this useful. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.